One of the reasons the parables remain so compelling is that there are certain fundamental truths about the economic dimension of life that remain unchanged, even given the changes in technology, demographics, and lifestyles from 2,000 years ago to the present. It is, after all, still the case that nature does not provide enough in the way of resources to meet all human needs at any one moment. Resources have grown enormously, and yet they remain scarce in comparison to human needs and desires. That means that we will always have to face the reality of scarcity and the problem of the production, creation, and allocation of goods and services to serve human needs. Wealth is not given, it must be created. And there are more successful and less successful ways of achieving that. Then, once wealth is created, we must face the inevitable moral dilemmas about how it is to be allocated. The fundamental fact of scarcity in this world confronts us with both practical and moral issues concerning ownership, responsibility, waste, and efficiency. We must also constantly confront the forward passage of time as an economic constraint, a reality all too often simply ignored. This may well be the origin of the phrase, "time is money." There are trade-offs, the accumulation versus the distribution of wealth, the here and now versus the longer term, and, of course, between the temporal and the eternal. In this vale of tears, there will always be a struggle between provision for material life and the interior preparation for the next. These choices, trade-offs, and dilemmas are not limited to one geographic location or even to one class of people. They are universal and unavoidable. The problem of scarcity, properly considered as the perpetual state of desiring things we don't have, including time itself, confronts rich and poor, city dweller and rural resident, merchant and monk, male and female, theist and agnostic. These are challenges that persist in all times and places and impact everyone. Simply put, economic constraints are an inescapable fact of life in good times and bad, and everything in between. Economic constraints are with us no matter who we are or when or where we abide. I suspect it is precisely because so many of the parables draw from the enduring realities of economics and commercial life that they provide lasting lessons. The parables deal with topics at a very practical and personal level, as well as on the more profound and higher plane of moral and spiritual obligation. This book, then, seeks to enhance the higher truths the parables contain by investigating the more practical ends of economics, commerce, and business ethics that can be overlooked. In other words, my attempt here is to discern, in the midst of the mundane, the transcendent implications. It is important to understand at the outset that by economics, I do not mean only buying and selling, much less mere mathematics. I intend more fundamentally the discipline that elucidates the implications of scarcity in the material world, the entire complex nature of exchange, trade, and human action. In particular, I am intrigued by how the economic and commercial perspective can more unfold for us the deeper moral and theoretical implications of Jesus' teaching. It is not my intention here to derive an economic theory or theology, much less an ideology from the parables. In point of fact, economics as a scientific or intellectual discipline did not even exist in Jesus' time. Thus, to attribute specific economic policies to the Savior would be anachronistic, even if what is true about economics now was similarly true in the first century. My effort is, instead, to detect the universal economic assumptions at play within the stories themselves, while at the same time acknowledging that these assumptions are not themselves the core intent, moral, or goal of the parable, and that from time to time, Jesus turns such assumptions on their head to make his point. A good bit of my public intellectual life has been engaged with economic policy and its consequences, especially the moral consequences of economic decision-making. At the same time, I have always been involved in full-time pastoral work, so my underlying motive for writing this book might be described as an effort at integration or even translation. I wish to show how an economically informed person might approach the parables in a reasonable and sensible way,